Fall Guys is a game that I'm sure needs no introduction. You, a little blob, and 59 other blobs get to compete in challenges reminiscent of Takeshi's Castle, Wipeout, and that one Minecraft server of which the name escapes me. It's an extremely fun and addictive game, one that keeps you wanting to play more, except when you get put in a team game with a crap team, then it makes you want to quit out of anger. When launching Fall Guys for the first time, there is one thing that immediately stands out, and that's the upbeat, exciting music that plays. When I heard this music for the first time, something in my brain lit up. I've heard this music before. Not exactly this music, but one that sounds very, very familiar. The more rounds I played, the more it annoyed me that I couldn't put my finger on where I've heard this music before. I eventually got up and looked around the house for what I suspected was the game with the Fall Guys-esque music. And here it is. This is Iceland, not to get confused with the country or the supermarket. This is a game created by Crumbflower Multimedia and published by Play Publishing. Play was an extremely popular developer and publisher in Poland in the 2000s, releasing games that would cost around 10 to 20 złotych. That's about 2 to 4 pounds. The game's price would typically reflect the quality of the games, and it's obvious with this game. I would love to talk more about Play in the future, as their games were a massive part of childhoods of Polish kids. Within the game's CDs are also other freeware games, like this very fun Crazy Lunch game, which has been ported over to Android a couple of years ago. It also features a PDF of the Gamer magazine, a magazine also owned by Play Publishing. You see, most of Play's games were released in kiosks, and were typically bundled with game magazines like Gamer Extra, Max Kids, or Game Ranking. I personally never read these magazines and always went for the games, but you have no idea how nostalgic I feel right now researching these magazines. Walking past the kiosk on a warm summer day and seeing all those game magazines, that's something I'll never forget. I'm completely unable to find anything about the developers of this game though, and even finding information about this game has been really hard. What I've been able to find is that this game has been rebranded as Ice Pingu, Penguin Challenge, and Happy Pingu. The game's logic has also been reused in a game called Teddy Bears, also published by Play. Minus different assets, the game looks to be exactly the same. A sequel to Iceland was also created and is still available to purchase from a different publisher on Wild Tangent. Okay, enough talk about Iceland, let's play the game. The first thing that we can see when we launch the game are the two penguins that are chilling out in the middle of the sea, with a whale. What we can hear is the intro music, which is why we're here. Have a listen and let me know if it sounds familiar to you. In the menu we don't have much options. We only have an option to change volume, graphics details, and see the instructions. Externally within the game files is a program to let you increase the resolution. And in the readme files, Linux is mentioned despite this game not coming out for Linux as far as I'm aware. This will make perfect sense as a little Linux game alongside games like Super Tux and Super Tux Kart. The premise of this game is to bring fish to your wife, or else she'll beat you with a rolling pin. How stereotypical. Their game is a basic arcade style game that plays similar to something like Pac-Man or Cuba. Get the fish, bring them back to your wife, while avoiding the enemies and the melting icebergs. Despite the premise being extremely simple, the devs threw in a curveball. The game's camera is so zoomed in it makes it difficult to know where the fish is and if the space you're about to jump on is there or if it has melted. This is the main way you're going to end up dying and it's not really fair. You end up having to take it slow when jumping from platform to platform to allow the camera to move back. When playing on the harder difficulty settings, the arrow to point you in the direction of the fish goes away, meaning the best strategy is to move to the back of the map and scope out the fish. This is very time consuming and you're likely to lose out lives doing this. After a couple of levels, you and your wife move to a different location, filled with different enemies and different game assets, but the gameplay is still the same. I haven't got to the third location ever, mostly because the game gets so boring after 5 minutes, and I don't have the willpower in me to try and beat it. What I can tell you is that standing on the space where the monkey is makes you lose life, while the previous enemy doesn't. This means that on the hardest difficulty you get a monkey spawning in the middle of a sea, which just looks weird. The higher difficulty settings have a faster time and less lives, but the gameplay is otherwise about the same. Frankly, I'm not surprised that this game has been forgotten about by the internet, it's just not a very interesting game. I love the visual art style in the first level and the music has seemingly stuck with me for the past 16 years. But similarly to how I found the game boring and too difficult when I was 5, I now find this game too difficult to get through just because of how boring it is.